So welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Miller. I'm president of BI Tracks Consulting. This webinar is designed to show you how you can revolutionize your data integration practices. Much of what we do is in the context of building data warehouses, but of course, data integration applies in many other scenarios than just data warehousing. In this presentation, we're going to build an SSIS project, put it in Visual Studio. We're going to build a package and projects that we can run natively directly within Azure Data Studio. And we'll also create an Azure Data Factory pipeline. But the common denominator for all this is, in fact, Azure Data Studio. Just a quick backstory. We have built dozens of data warehouses for enterprise clients. We have all the war wounds to show for it. We tend to get bogged down in ELT, ETL. That seems to be the long pole in the tent in terms of timelines for standing up a data warehouse. So that's where we've really focused on is the ELT and the ETL. And then also what we realize is to make people happy, what we need to do is automate. And so this is kind of the end product of a great deal of automation. Feel free to ask us any questions in the chat window. We'll try to get through all the content and then go back and visit the questions. Unless there's something that's terribly important, we'll just keep going, and then close to probably 3:25 Eastern time, we'll open it up for questions. But in the meantime, you can go ahead and put something in chat. Okay, why Azure Data Studio? Well, one reason, it is the future for Microsoft. It will eventually fully replace SQL Server Management Studio, but it is their portal to databases, both cloud and on-premise. It's got Azure in the name, but it works very well on-prem, just like SQL Server Management Studio. It is open source, it's cross-platform. So this is, again, new from Microsoft. Go ahead and put all the source code out there. So you can go to GitHub, get all the source code for Azure Data Studio, and use the extensibility. It was really designed for extensions. So this is where we can put our logic, bake it directly into Azure Data Studio, and then have kind of a seamless user experience when you work with databases, when you have maybe your PowerShell Python scripts, your notebooks, in fact, we're using Azure Data Studio here for the presentation. This is a Jupyter Notebook. It uses the SQL kernel, but it is extraordinarily powerful for queries, for documenting queries, for storing results of queries, and for sharing your data directly from sharing notebooks. In fact, this notebook will be shared. We'll get you a link to where there's two notebooks are in GitHub as well. Okay, one thing to note, we do ELT instead of ETL. The reason for that is ELT is a much more promising approach to data integration because you don't take your transformations and embed them in the pipeline. So ETL says read, transform, and then load, but that means all your transformations are in the pipeline, which invariably marries you to a platform, whether that's Informatica, whether that's SSIS, any Talent, et cetera. So the idea with ELT is just do an extract and load. Once you get your data on your destination server, like say your data warehouse in a staging area, then you transform it. You transform it just with SQL. So it really breaks everything down into just two components, extract and load, which is a very simple, no transformation read-write, and then transform, which is SQL, SQL being the lingua franca for databases. You have the best chance of having code that is portable from one platform to another if it is just an SQL. Now there's different dialects. T-SQL, SnowSQL, we support both. But the refactoring is minimal compared to taking SSIS packages, hundreds, et cetera, and refactoring that into another totally different platform, maybe to SQL or to a different ETL type product. It's also much better in the cloud, because in the cloud, you're able to dramatically hyper scale your compute. So let's say you're renting 10, 20, 100 servers or cores, compute nodes, where you can then process, instead of in hours or days, in minutes, and then you just, like a taxi, walk away, you're not paying for it anymore. You could never do that on-prem, but that scalability, that hyper scalability is available in the cloud. So an ELT architecture gives you that cloud capability, which down the road will come in very handy when you need some extra horsepower very quickly. Stand it up, run it, shut it down, and you now have tremendous performance in your ELT. So let's quickly build an SSIS project. I'm going to use immelsnap. So immelsnap is a database. Let's take a look at that database. It's right here. You would get this as a part of our solution. And in the immelsnap database, it's nothing more than your connections, your packages, your parameters. The front end that we're going to interact with will populate that. You don't really need to know all the basics, but it is handy, because the Azure Data Studio is nothing more than a front end to this database. You could open up the database, open up the projects table, and enter in a project. You could use a front end, which we have a front end integrated into Azure Data Studio. You could also use an insert statement. So let's see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and go into the immelsnap extension for Azure Data Studio. I can get, and you can see the extension option here. We've got immelsnap installed. We've also got ELT Snap installed. So these would be downloaded from our website, as well as the database that I had shown just a minute ago. Okay, so to get to that extension, you would hit F1, and then from F1, we'll choose immelsnap Open Forms. And you can see we've got, delete that one, that was left over from the last demo. You can see we have 2 projects here. I can add a new project simply by clicking New Project. I'll give it the name of the project I want. And I'll go ahead and choose Create. And so now I've got Demo 3 as a project. Now I could also, from the notebook, I could issue an insert command. Now this insert command is actually a snippet. A snippet is another way to extend Azure Data Studio. You just type the keywords for the snippet and it should pop up. So I want to create a project in Bimmel. I start with BIML CR and then PR, and you can see how it highlighted just the components from left to right of the snippet you're looking for, and this is one we would like. The snippet pops up and says, okay, I'm going to insert into this table. What's the name of your project? Well, I'll call it Demo 4. I could also give it a different template if I like. I'll just use the no alerts template. So I'll go ahead and run that. Let me first connect to my immelsnap database. Okay, so I've just connected to this. The notebook kernel is SQL and wants to know what do I run this against. So okay, we'll go ahead and run that. Actually, let's take a look in the front end and see if it created that demo 4 for us. So F1 Open Forms, and there we go. So it created that project. So you have 2 options. You can go through the front end, or you could just do an insert into the table. You could open up a table in the editor even and type it in. So everything is database driven. And then from the database, we go to BIML and SSIS, or to JSON at Azure Data Factory, or just run the definition, which is our ELT Snap runtime. All right, so the next thing, now that we have a project, is we want to create some connections. Same thing applies for the connections. I can use Azure Data Studio, and we actually have a sync option in there. What the sync option will do is it'll take all of the connections that you've defined in Azure Data Studio and put it inside the immelsnap database. Or we have a database for ELT Snap, put them in there as well. So that's a very convenient way to share the connections that you've already defined within Azure Data Studio. Or you could you run a snippet to insert, or you could, again, open up the editor window. So I'll go ahead and go into the immelsnap extension, and I'll go to the connections. So this is so confused. I'll go ahead and get rid of that. So for the connections on demo 3, you can see we have one connection. This connection was provided automatically because of the framework. All of our packages work with a SSIS framework or an ETL framework. So as you run, it will store row counts, runtime, et cetera. It's also tied to a Power BI dashboard, so you can see trended information of how long this has taken over time. So to sync the connections, I've got a button here. I'll just click sync connections, and now the extension is walking through the object model of all the connections that have been defined within Azure Data Studio, and it's creating these connections for us. So we can take a look at all connections, and let me try that. Demo 3, all connections. Okay, so you can see it's gone through and created all of these connections commensurate with what you have within Azure Data Factory, or sorry, Azure Data Studio. All right, so now that we have connections defined, what I'd like to do is create a data flow and go from one server to another server, and I've got 2 test connections for that. So what I'll do is I'll select the test source, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to add this to a project. Now notice I'm not adding a new connection. These connections are all reusable. What I want to do is have a connection object shared with multiple projects. So I'm not adding or creating a new connection. I'm going to add this connection to the project, which is going to be demo 3. So I'll select that, the source, add to project, demo 3, add the connection. So if I look at demo 3, I've got test source in there. Go back to all connections. I'll put the destination in there as well. Add to project, demo 3. Go ahead and add that connection. Okay, now I'll go to demo 3, and I've got my source and my destination and my framework. So the next step now is to create a data flow to move data from my source to my destination. So for this, I'll go to packages. I've got one in there that was just a sample package. So I'll remove it from the project. And now I'm going to click on add data flow. Now I can also insert a row into the data flow table. I can insert 100 rows into the data flow table and create 100 different data flows. But in this case, I'll just go ahead and use the graphical user interface. I'm going to call this copy. We'll go from the source to the destination. I'll go ahead and pick up, if this is the time dimension. So I'll go ahead and select from that time dimension. And then I'm going to place this on the destination in a table with the very same name. So DBO, and then the time, not sign, case sensitive. I'll truncate the destination before it runs, and I'll go ahead and create that package. Okay, so now we have add the package. What I'll do next is create a project in Visual Studio for this. So in order to do that, I'll go to the projects. I see demo 3. I'm going to build it. This will build the XML or the BIML. Then I have to tell it which folder to place it in. And I've already created this Visual Studio project. It did build it successfully. I'll click copy. And that should have copied all of the BIML files into this particular project. Actually, it was already running before. Let me just start over. Just delete everything out of here. Okay. We'll take a look at the folder to see the BIML 315. That's right. Let's go ahead, right click. We can actually look at it. So this is the BIML that was built. By the way, we will create the packages leveraging an extension that's called BIML Express from Verigens. So before you can actually convert this XML or this BIML into packages, you have to install the extension BIML Express from Verigens. So once you do that, you can see here the 3 connections. They are parameter driven. So at the very same time that we created those connections, we created parameters for them. And you can take a look at what the parameters look like right here. So for the test, destination, and source, the 2 servers, the name of the database. And again, these are parameter driven as well. You can tie them to environments. So you can run a dev, test, and prod and tell it which environment to run them in. And it'll adjust the parameters accordingly. Okay, so all I have to do now is just right click and choose generate. So this will go through and build the package. It also gives us a run all, because normally we have several packages that we run. And so we automatically create this run all, and the run all will call in sequence, and you can order the sequencing and run in parallel each of the packages. So we'll go ahead and click run. And there you go. It moved, I think, 86,000 rows. So we'll go back to the notebook and let's take a look at, this is the batch log. So that should tell us the project that ran. Okay, let me do this. Come back. Sometimes the connections in Azure Data Studio, when you have an extension that's sharing that same connection, sometimes that gets a little wonky. So I'll just restart that. All right, so we'll go back to, let's look at, run this. So let's connect to immelsnap v2, v7, there we go. Okay, so we'll run that. And so that just ran 317, 86,000 rows. That's at the project level. It summarizes all the packages it ran. If you want to see the individual packages, so there's the data flow that just kicked off, execution good, et cetera. And so that's how quickly you can build an SSIS package. We do have one sample project I can show you that's more detailed. So this would be our metadata refresh. This is a little bit of a data, it's a data mart of your metadata. So it will go to your various servers, collect table information, column information. So this is generally what you would see in the particular order. If the sequence number is the same, they run in parallel. Then this would go through and collect your metadata. So this actually, we auto-generate merge statements. That's one of the more time-consuming things that you could do. So if we edit, you can see the merge statement that was generated automatically. So what we do is we take your metadata and you just label columns type 1, type 2, or business key, and it will write this merge statement for you, a huge time saver. And so this is a data mart, but you could use this with your customer dimension, your product dimension, et cetera. All right, I got 10 minutes to go through 2 more, so I'm going to have to pick this up, obviously. Let's go ahead and go over to Elt Snap. This is what ELT Snap looks like. In the same way that you have a single database that collects all your configurations, it has its own framework. What we do is we add this Python runtime. So we skip BIML, we skip SSIS. You don't need a license from Microsoft to run SSIS. You obviously need to license your databases, but depending on how your servers are architected, if you have standalone SSIS servers, you can save a lot of money by just using our runtime. The runtime will do the same thing as the SSIS runtime in an ELT paradigm. So it'll do data flows, it'll do transfer or execute SQLs for your transformation. What we don't have is all the components built into the pipeline, like lookup components, slowly changing dimensions, those types, because all of that is simply SQL done on the server. So if you throw all of those pieces out, just get down to EL, the data flows and the transformation, we were able to create a runtime in a reasonable number of years. So you could actually now bypass BIML, SSIS in its entirety. So let's see if we can do the same thing. Let's go ahead and we have a different extension for this one, a different database for this, but the idea is the same. In this case, what we have is a Python notebook. So we're running Python instead of SQL, but in your notebooks, you can have a kernel that's PowerShell, Python, SQL, etc. And Python gives us a little more versatility than just SQL because of Python. In any event, if I want to create a project and I didn't know the syntax, etc., then I would just type ELT, because it's not BIML, it's ELT, create. I want to create a project, and there we go. So that snippet pops up. It wants to know the name of the project you want to create. I'll call this demo 4. And again, you have logging options that you could choose. I'll go ahead and run that. And so you can see it created it. It doesn't necessarily give you a GUID or a GUI. You can see graphically what's going on, but we do create an HTML file from this. I can just pick up that HTML file, go down to my terminal window, and I can paste that in. And that now has created HTML document showing our projects, including demo 4 that we just created, which there isn't anything there right now, just a couple of parameters and a connection. All right. So now I want to create connections for it. So in this case, I'm going to go into our ELT Snap extension. And let's go, first connect to it. So let's go to ELT Snap over here. There we go, F1, ELT Snap open forms. Okay, so there's demo 4. I need a couple of connections. So I'm going to go ahead and click on connections. This connection is going to be for demo 4. I don't have the connection defined in ELT Snap, so I'll go ahead and say new connection. And I'm going to call this source. I'll pick that up. This is on SRv6. The database has the same name as the connection that I gave it. You can put in a secret. And so if you have a custom connect string, you're in Azure, you can use Azure Key Vault so you don't have plain text passwords. So go ahead and create that. And we'll put in one more. So a new connection. And this is going to be our destination. So this would be SEST. I'll save that. This is going to be on a different server. Database is the same name, etc. Create that. Okay. Now we have source and destination. The last thing we need to do is create a package. So I'll go to a package. I'm going to add a data flow package. You can see all the different types of patterns that we have. Here, I'll call it the same thing. Copy. The source connection is test source, the destination, test destination. It is the same query I had a minute ago. Of course, you can put any select statement that you like in here, and you can also drive it by parameters if you want an expression-driven query. and it'll be the same destination or same table name on a different server for the destination. Time dimension, I'm going to truncate it before I run, save the package. All right, so now we can actually run it. We have to build BIML, we have to go to Visual Studio. To run this, I could run just the package or I could run the project. I'll do the latter. So here's demo 4, I'm going to click run. And you can provide, if it was parameter driven, you can give it the environment. You can change the template, the volume of logging that you're doing. If you click run, then what happens is it goes down to the terminal window and it gives you this command. And what this command says is execute the runtime, tell it the configuration is in this server, this database, use this template and run this project called demo 4. So that's all you have to do. It kicks off, it starts the runtime, and then we're done. So same thing, much more streamlined, and it just did that copy that quickly. All right, lastly, want to show you Azure Data Factory. I won't be able to do justice to this, but I'll show you in just a few minutes how this works. So I've got another ELT Snap database on a different server. I'm going to use that, and I'll go ahead and open up the forms. You can see we have many more projects defined here, but one is to set up ADF 2.0. So I'm just going to highlight that. Actually, I can show you the packages that are in there. So it's actually in reverse order. It should be sorted differently, but that's going to create Azure Data Factory, set a key vault, trust, relationship, create 4 link services, a database, or sorry, 2 data sets, and a pipeline. All right, so let's go ahead, go back to setup ADF 2.0, and we'll click run. And that'll, again, place the command down in the terminal window. I'll go ahead and launch that. Now, if we go over to Azure Data Factory, you should see that it should have created, okay, no Data Factory yet. Let's give it a minute. Here, what we can do. So we can go to the control panel and see what's going on here. Okay, so now it's done. Let's refresh that again. There we go. Okay, so it created Azure Data Factory for us. Let's go ahead and go into Azure Data Factory. Let's see what else. Let's refresh that. There we go. So we created a couple of linked services. Let's take a look back. Azure Data Factory. Let's go to, okay, so you can see linked services. It created our key vault. It created a link service to Azure Data blob storage. Let's go ahead and refresh that one more time. All right, and now we have 2 connections to 2 different databases. This one is probably done. Yeah, okay, so it's finished. And let's go back one more time. Let's take a look at the pipelines. Should have created, there we go. So we have 2 data sets that were defined, and then a pipeline. And so now you have a graphical representation of this particular pipeline, which is a simple copy data from this source into this destination. I'll show you your mapping, etc. So I know that was a whirlwind. We've got 1 minute for questions. We can continue on if you have any other questions, but this, oh yeah, before we wrap up, we wanted to keep this to 30 minutes. But if I go back to here's copy, or this is what the dashboard looks like. So for next step, you can download the extensions, the databases. We also have front ends. These are Windows front end through both Elt Snap and immelsnap. You can download that from bitracks.com. This presentation is in GitHub. Let me open that up. So if you want to go to this particular GitHub site, you can download both of these two notebooks that we use. You can put them directly into Azure Data Studio. You can also contact us at info.bitracks.com if you need some help. And because you were good enough to attend this, you can contact Connor at cmutin, that's CMUNTIN at bitracks.com, and he will get you a free copy of our book on Azure Data Studio, which is called Hands-On Azure Data Studio, which you can also go to Amazon and buy it. But if you call Connor, you'll get a free copy. All right, any questions? I don't see any, so that's okay. Either I've confused everybody or you're just still soaking it in. Call us if you have any questions. Again, need any help. And again, thank you so much for attending. We'll be doing these probably once per week and start doing some deep dives into each of these usage scenarios for Azure Data Studio. Thank you.